and we'll go back to Photoshop, which so we have a couple of these tools at our disposal, and it's really a matter of looking at a certain area and thinking, well, am I just going to get away with brushing over this with my spot healing tool? You know, it does a pretty decent job, and you can probably everything but the eye you can do with the spot healing tool. But that said, if that would be the only tool you would want to use, you do get better results when you make your brush sometimes a little bit smaller and sometimes a little bit larger. And that kind of brings me kind of to the end of these tools and the cloning tool. And actually, there's also it's a very nasty tool, because what this tool will do is it will erase. Let me just make my layer here invisible. And so this looks like an eraser, right? It's an eraser tool, and it does exactly that. It will just erase whatever there is. And when you see this checkered board in Photoshop, that always means that you're looking at transparency. Now, as you can see from kind of the finished version here, that it looks a little prettier. The edges are straighter. And what I want to do is with this, I created an extra layer, probably with some of the tools, and I can just go into the little trash can here at the bottom and then delete that layer. So this is my working layer. Yes, this is my working layer, and I'm going to try and clean up this edge. And what I can do, what I can do in Photoshop, right? I can duplicate the layer, but what I can also do is I can go in my little pancake stack and create a new layer. And what this means is that this new layer, I can give a name. I'm gonna call it white. And you'll see that this layer is transparent because there's the checkered mark, and it's a visible layer, and it sits on top of this layer, so it's transparent. And what I can do with this layer is I can Command A, or actually I don't even have to select it, and I can go to my edit and fill, and instead of filling it with content aware, I can fill it with black or with white or with 50% gray. So let's fill it with white. And so now you'll see that this layer that sits on top of my finished piece is covering everything, and I can click and hold and drag that layer underneath it. And so now, right, so here's the portrait component, and then there's the layer. And as I can clean up some of these edges a little bit more, what I can do with the portrait is I can make a gigantic selection. I have a selection, but I can make a selection of the area that I want to have floating on the white background. So I'm making a selection with my marquee select tool, which is this rectangular selection tool. And I'm identifying kind of what it is that I want to do. And if this is not what I want to do, I Command D to drop my selection, and I can just go and select this. And this is kind of, I don't really want to deal with this. And so my selection, this area, right, if I would hit the delete key, this area is my selected area. Command Z to undo that. And in Photoshop, I can select the inverse of the area that I have selected. And so if I hit the delete key of the other area, then I can get a really nice clean line here. Now, if you think about that, if you think about what I'm doing is I'm making a selection, Command Z, and Command Z again, and here delete. So I'm making a selection of an area, and that same line that is separating my selected area from my non-selected area, I can Command Z to undo that fill. I can reverse that or inverse that. And you can already think about when you're making an adjustment and you're using a selection, that if you then inverse, you have the direct line, the direct connection, and you don't have to make it again. So that's how you clean that image up, by just making a selection. And now there's another thing that I want you to do, and this is, if you like this, you'll never want to leave Photoshop ever in your life, because these two tools, these are the dodge and the burn tools. And what dodging and burning does in Photoshop is the same thing that dodging and burning does when we used to be in the light room, in the dark room. I spent a couple of years in the dark room, and I'm just going to go to my finished image here. And an image. I can teach you everything about Photoshop that there is to know, but this is the most important thing. An image has highlights, my whites. An image has midtones, and an image has shadows. And in Photoshop or in the darkroom, I can control my highlights, my midtones, and my shadows, and every nuance in between. And I do that by going, I'm going to do something to my image, and my layer here is selected that I want to do something to, and I go to image. I want to make an adjustment to this image. There's all these options. And the only one that I use all the time is levels, and levels or curves. And here in levels, when you look at this, so this is a histogram. This means that this is the shadows, these are the highlights, and this tells me there's a lot of area in the middle highlights. These are my shadows. And you have these levers, and if I pull this lever, you can see that now my image, my shadows were where my midtones were, right? And my highlights, I can bring my highlights all the way to the other end. And I can also do that with my midtones. And very often when I have a photograph and I want to bring out a little bit more there, I open up my my midtones. All right, so this is very important stuff to kind of understand, because the next thing is I can make a local adjustment. Here, let me just show you. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. I always duplicate the layer, and I'm going to make an adjustment, and I'm going to change the difference between my highlights, my midtones, and my shadows. So I'm going to make the image a little contrastier, a little crispier, and I'm going to bring these highlights up a little bit more and just give it a little bit more tone. And then so here you see the before and the after, and you see a difference, right? Yes, can everybody see me?
Yes.
And can you see the difference?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. So I'm going to leave this one alone. I'm going to start working on my my original, right? So here I made some adjustments, but this is the really cool stuff. And these two tools, dodging and burning. And dodging means I'm making an area lighter, and burning means I'm making an area darker. I get the brush tool, and so the same thing in the same area, you can select the brush size. Large brushes, ladies and gentlemen, with soft edges do the best job. Here, let me make a hard, small brush. Next thing, I'm going to do that. And so what I can do now is So this means I'm burning, and then I can burn the shadows, the midtones, or the highlights. Never burn the highlights, always burn the shadows or the midtones. And so if I zoom in and I want this area to be a little bit darker, I know this area is in my midtones, and I have a brush and I can set exposure to the brush. I'm just going to set it for 100. And now I'm making only this area darker. Command Z to undo that because it's too much. And so what I can do is I can set my exposure to 50% and then make it even 25%. And then just make that a little bit darker. And then maybe make this area a little bit darker. And maybe make this area a little bit darker. And maybe make that area a little bit darker. Right? And oh, I'm going a little bit too dark. Now, the opposite tool here is called my dodge tool. I'm dodging my midtones, and so I can take a little bit back there. Really good trick, and these eyes don't really have enough resolution, but on Tuesday I have a higher resolution file, so make some space on your, right, so what are we doing? We're dodging, we're making the midtones a little bit lighter in the eye. So let's see if we can actually get a little bit more out of that eye. Yeah, there's a little bit more coming, but it's so much, well, there's more there now. And then since with portraits and my teachers, what they would tell me, I'm just going to use a big burn tool. My teachers would tell me, well, what are we photographing? Are we photographing a dress or are we photographing a person, right? And how much of the dress is really necessary? So they would say, well, if that stuff needs to be there, then it's got to be a little bit darker. So, and this is where you get the gigantic burn tool. And this is going to make every image look better immediately. So we're going to make a nice big brush, not that big. I'm going to make like a 350. All right, so we're going to make a 1,000-point brush. Type in the number. There we go. That's a nice big brush. We're going to burn our midtones, and we're going to burn them pretty aggressively, 60%. This is the layer. Now look what happens. So I'm gradually burning the corners of this image, and that was a little bit much maybe. And so I've burned the midtones, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to dodge with that same gigantic brush the midtones here very subtly. I think I'm going to have to put it a little bit further back. Yeah. All right. And now look at the difference. So this is where I started, and then this is what I did a little bit later. And then if I really want to see what I've done, I can make everything a little bit darker, a little bit more contrasty. And then maybe burn or dodge these midtone areas a little bit more. So now you're pulling the eye into what is important in the picture, and I'm kind of going a little overboard here. Instead of here, I don't really know where to look, right? And let's compare this to the original, right? The original was very flat. And so now, by dodging and burning, by understanding that the eye needs to go to the highlight, I made some other adjustments other than restoring the image. And you can see I couldn't fix the eye. I think I've done it once or twice, cut really close, but the rest of the image is pretty good. And this is where you say, all right, so that is enough. Dodging and burning, very important tools, as well as your levels. All right. And again, levels show my shadows, my midpoint, my midtones, and my highlights. And then this is an overall adjustment. And then dodging and burning you can make. And again, the more you work on this, the better it is going to be. And the only thing that I'm asking you to do is kind of explore these tools. And then, so I've done a lot of work here, and I'm going to stop because the next thing that I'm going to talk about is resolution. How's everyone doing? Does everyone have a little bit more energy for some more theory?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yes? All right.
Yes.
Wait, so when's this project due?
Next Thursday.
Alright.
And you hand it in, and if I can see that you made some effort, then you get a pass. So it's not, this is not about, oh, you know, you couldn't do the eye, so you get an A-. You do it, you show effort. Yeah, I do a nice, respectful job. This is for a class assignment. I'm putting a lot of energy into teaching you this, so I want to see that you can do it.